Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to my channel right here on YouTube, Shirley's Channel Chatter. So, this is my channel here on YouTube. I have three channels here on YouTube, and all three of them will be geared towards, bringing information to you, my channel, public, uh, mostly business, accounting, law, all kinds of, information. As long as it's related to business, law, accounting. I want to bring information on different philosophers, ancient philosophers, um, musicians, I guess I would say ancient musicians of our past. We talk about Mozart, Beethoven, all that different ones, artists, painters, Picasso, Rembrandt, Michelangelo. And recently I brought information on slavery, Rosa Parks, uh, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, uh, so many different ones, Harriet Beecher Stowe. So today I want to talk a little bit about Martin Luther King, and a few other topics. So thanks for joining me. Glad to see you. Glad you could be here. So let me see. I want to talk a little bit about Martin Luther King today. I said Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln, and a couple other young gentlemen, from our history. So Martin Luther King, and then I want to probably read some quotes from Martin Luther King, from his repertoire, I guess I would say. So Martin Luther King Jr. biography and quotes. So Martin Luther King, he was born January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States of America. Died April 4th, 1968. So I remember that. I definitely remember that day when we got that message that Dr. Martin Luther King had been assassinated. That was the worst day of my life. One of the worst days. He was a Baptist minister and social activist who led the civil rights movement in the United States from the mid 1950s until his death by assassination in 1968. His leadership was fundamental to that movement's success in ending the legal segregation of African Americans in the South and other parts of the United States. King rose to national prominence. He rose to national prominence as head of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which promoted nonviolent tactics such as the massive March on Washington. I remember that March on Washington. I remember March on Washington, and then later on, we had the Million Man March. So the March on Washington was 1963, and it was to achieve the civil rights, because our civil rights were at stake, I would say. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. In the early years, King came from a comfortable middle-class family, steeped in the tradition of the Southern Black ministry. Both his father and maternal grandfather were Baptist preachers. His parents were college educated, and King's father had succeeded his father-in-law as pastor of the prestigious Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. So he was from Atlanta, Georgia. The family lived on Auburn Avenue, otherwise known as Sweet Auburn, the bustling Black Wall Street, home to some of the country's largest and most prosperous black businesses and black churches in the years before the Civil Rights Movement. Young Martin received a solid education and grew up in a loving extended family. So he had a good education, grew up in a solid, educated family as well. And so a lot of times when things happen to people, they have bad luck in their life as they come up, as they grow up, then, a lot of times we always look at, their family upbringing, you want to know about their parents, you want to know about the siblings, you want to know, where their dad kids? Were they bad coming up, growing up? You know, did they finish school? Did they drop out? You know, you always want to know some of those things. So you always want to know some of those things. But Martin Luther King grew up in a nice, solid educational, I guess, extended family. And it says, this secure upbringing, however, did not prevent King from experiencing the prejudices then common in the South. So in other words, he grew up in a prestigious uh, middle class family, educated family. He was educated. He went to college, but he still that still didn't stop him from I guess I would say experiencing a lot of prejudices, racism, you know. So prejudice back then, and I assume that it was, I mean, I know I was pretty much am sure that, you know, back in those days, prejudice, you know, racism was really high. Racism was very prevalent. He never forgot the time when at about age 6, one of his white playmates announced that his parents would no longer allow him to play with King because the children were now attending segregated schools. Dearest to King in these early years was his maternal grandmother, whose death in 1941 left him shaken and unstable. Upset because he had learned of her fatal demise, I guess I would say, while attending the parade without his parents' permission, the 12-year-old King attempted by jumping from a, so I don't want to read that part, but so that's what he was feeling so bad, and in 1944, at age 15, King entered Morehouse College in Atlanta under a special wartime program intended to boost enrollment by admitting promising high school students like King before beginning college. However, King spent the summer on a tobacco farm in Connecticut. Hold on for a second. You already know. So I want to turn ready, Ada off. So King spent the summer on a tobacco farm in Connecticut. It was his first extended stay away from home and his first substantial experience of race relations outside the segregated South. So he experienced a lot of racism in the South, segregated South. He was shocked by how peacefully the races mixed in the North. So he felt that the races, they got along well in the North, but in the South, there was a lot of segregation and a lot of prejudice and a lot of racism. He was shocked by how peacefully the races mixed in the North. Negroes and whites, they went to church together. He noted in a letter to his parents. So in other words, he wrote to his parents, letting them know how things were going. And so he said, I never thought that a person of my race could eat anywhere. He said, this summer experience in the North only deepened King's growing hatred of racial segregation. So he went to Morehouse College. At Morehouse, King favored studies in medicine and law, but these were eclipsed in his senior year by a decision to enter the ministry as his father had urged. King's mentor at Morehouse was the college president, Benjamin Mays, a social gospel activist whose rich oratory and progressive idea had left an inedible imprint on King's father. Committed to fighting racial inequality, Mays accused the African American community of complacency in the face of oppression. And he prodded the black church into social action by criticizing its emphasis on the hereafter instead of the here and now. It was a call to service that was not lost on the teenage King. He graduated from Morehouse in 1948. So Dr. King graduated from Morehouse College in 1948. So let me see. Okay, let me read about the Montgomery bus boycott of Martin Luther King Jr. So Martin Luther King then later met up with Rosa Parks, because Rosa Parks, she paid her fare, got on the bus. She was supposed to stand up, or find a seat, on the back of the bus. But instead, she found a seat where she could when she got on the bus. So the bus driver, he saw that there were some white passengers that didn't have their, nowhere to sit. They didn't have nowhere to sit, so, he told Rosa that, she would have to get up from her seat to give it to one of the white passengers. So she didn't want to do that. She didn't do that. So she got arrested. At that time, she was working or even had some affiliation with the NAACP. So they made it, widespread. They made it widespread. So it says, while in Boston, King met Coretta Scott, a native Albanian who was studying at the New England Conservatory in Music. They were married in 1953 and had 4 children. King had been pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, slightly more than a year when the city's small group of civil rights advocates decided to contest racial segregation on that city's public bus system following an incident on December 1st, 1955, in which Rosa Parks, I was just talking about her, is December 1st, 1955, in which Rosa Parks, an African-American woman, had refused to surrender her bus seat to a white passenger, and as a consequence was arrested for violating the city's segregation law. Activists formed the Montgomery Improvement Association to boycott the transit system and choose King as their leader. He had the advantage of being a young, well-trained man who was too new in town to have made enemies. He was generally respected, and it was thought that his family connections and professional standing would enable him to find another pastorate should a boycott fail. And then it says, recognizing the need for a mass movement to capitalize on the successful Montgomery action, King set about organizing the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which gave him a base of operation throughout the South, as well as a national platform from which to speak. King lectured in all parts of the country and discussed race-related issues with religious and civil rights leaders at home and abroad. In February 1959, he and his party were warmly received by India's Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and others. As a result of a brief discussion with followers, of Gandhi about the Gandhian concepts of peaceful non-compliance, King became increasingly convinced that nonviolent resistance was the most potent weapon available to oppress people in their struggle for freedom. King also looked to Africa for inspiration. The liberation struggle in Africa has been the greatest single international influence on American Negro students. He wrote, frequently I hear them say that if their African brothers can break the bonds of colonialism, surely the American Negro can break Jim Crow. So those Jim Crow laws were something else back in the day. I know Al Sharpton, he always talks about the Jim Crow laws. And those laws were something else. They were definitely not in favor of the African American. So I can pretty much see that. In 1960, King and his family moved to his native city of Atlanta, where he became co-pastor of his father of the Ebenezer Baptist Church. At this point, he devoted most of his time to the SCLC and the Civil Rights Movement. So he was very involved with the Civil Rights movement. Anything dealing with the civil rights, dealing with our civil rights, our ancestors. He was a part of that. Okay, and his thesis was soon tested as he agreed to support the sit-in demonstrations undertaken by local black college students. In late October, he was arrested with 33 young people protesting segregation at the lunch counter in an Atlanta department store. So he went to, the students were trying to do, they were doing a little sit-in and sort of like, protesting. So they went and sat at this lunch counter. They sat at the lunch counter and they probably already knew that they wasn't supposed to be there because it probably was only for, the whites to sit down at the lunch counter. They probably expected the African Americans to stand up while they were eating. So King, so in late October, he was arrested with 33 other they were students, young students. They were protesting segregation at the lunch counter. Charges were dropped, but King was sentenced to Reedsville State Prison Farm on the pretext that he had violated his probation on a minor traffic offense committed several months earlier. The case assumed national proportions with widespread concern over his safety, outrage at Georgia's flouting of legal forms, and the failure of President Dwight D. Eisenhower at the time to intervene. King was released only upon the intercession of Democratic presidential candidate John F. Kennedy, an action so widely publicized that it was felt to have contributed substantially to Kennedy's slender election victory 8 days later. So, in other words, presidential candidate John F. Kennedy did attempt to help King, Dr. King in his endeavor. So, but they found out that he was trying to help an African American. So, in other words, his election, that didn't help his election. That didn't help his, when he was running for president. His head. John F. Kennedy, he was a Democratic presidential candidate, and the action that he was helping Mr. King, Dr. King. So and everybody found out about it because it was publicized, and that it was felt to have contributed substantially to Kennedy's slender election victory 8 days later. So he had a slender election victory. It was slender. I guess he was, barely made it. He barely had received the votes that he needed because he was helping Dr. King. In the years from 1960 to 1965, King's influence reached its zenith. Handsome, eloquent, and doggedly determined, King quickly caught the attention of the news media, particularly of the producers of that budding medium of social change television. So this is some pictures, but they so small. I see if I have any larger pictures to show. The struggle for civil rights. It says he understood the power of television to nationalize and internationalize the struggle for civil rights. So Dr. King, he felt that he wanted to make it widespread. He wanted to, be on TV, publicize the civil rights movement on TV so the world could see it. So it says he understood the power of television to nationalize and internationalize, nationalize. So in countries, outside of countries, within, so international, so basically all over the world. So he understood the power of television and the struggle for the civil rights movement and his well-publicized tactics of active nonviolence. So Dr. King, he always believed in nonviolence. The nonviolent way would be the best way for him. And it says he understood the power of television to nationalize and internationalize the struggle for civil rights, and his well-publicized tactics of active nonviolence aroused the devoted allegiance of many African Americans and liberal whites in all parts of the country, as well as support from the administrations Presidents Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson, But there were also notable failures, as in Albany, Georgia, 1961 to 62, when King and his colleagues failed to achieve their desegregation goals for public parks and other facilities. It says the letter from the Birmingham jail of Martin Luther King Jr. So in other words, let me try to see how much time did he spend in jail. In Birmingham, Alabama, in the spring of 1963, King's campaign to end segregation at lunch counters and in hiring practices drew nationwide attention when police turned dogs and fire hoses on the demonstrators. So they turned the dogs on the demonstrators, and they still trying to sit at these counters. Because they figure, I paid my money. I want to buy some food. I want to sit down. I want to eat like everybody else. I don't have to stand up and eat. Why I have to stand up on the bus? Why I have to stand up in the back? I paid my fare to sit down on the bus. So that's what Rosa Parks felt. She felt like, look, I paid my fare, and she said it wasn't that she was tired. She said she was tired of still having to go through that. So that's why she didn't get up. She was just getting off work, but she didn't, because I read, according to the research that I read, that I brought forward on my last video, she wasn't tired from working, but she was just tired of, that she had to keep on going through that, getting on the bus, pay your fare, you got to stand up, stand in the back. Stand in the back of the bus, stand up, you couldn't be in the front. So if any white passengers had to, they needed a seat, you pay your money, you got to get your, that would not be happening. That would hardly be happening today. I mean, we do that. I mean, sometimes, I may get on the bus, but if I feel I want to get up, if I feel I might want to get up, and, it don't make no difference what, what race you are, what race, creed, or color, what ethnic group you are. If I feel, if it's somebody that's older than me, and, they could be of any race, and I feel that I want to get up, and, the bus is crowded, because I have done that before. I had people, older than me, they get on the bus, and, I'm already sitting down, I'll go ahead and get up, because I feel, if they're a little older than me, sometimes I go ahead and just let them have my seat. But other than that, we are not now, thank God today, we are not forced, it's not in law that we have to do that. So they did say that it was the bus company. So they must have had that law in place. And then also in the Constitution, slavery was legal, so why not take it all away? And, slavery was in the Constitution, it was legal. So then, that wasn't slavery, but that's almost like, it wasn't no better. So slavery in the Constitution, they figured, everything was about racism back then. So it said King was jailed along with large numbers of his supporters, including hundreds of school children. His supporters did not, however, include all the black clergy of Birmingham, and he was strongly opposed by some of the white clergy who had issued a statement urging African Americans not to support the demonstrations. See, he was strongly opposed by some of the white clergy who had issued a statement urging African Americans not to support. See, they urged them not to support because they probably figured if they support, they already knew that they were going to be arrested. So from the Birmingham jail, King wrote a letter of great eloquence in which he spelled out his philosophy of nonviolence. He said, you may well ask, why direct action? Why sit-ins, marches, and so forth? So this is Dr. King. Is a negotiation a better path? You are quite right in calling for negotiation. Indeed, this is the very purpose of direct action. Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and foster such a tension that a community which has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. So he believed in that nonviolent. He really believed in nonviolence, but at the end, they when they assassinated him, that was violent. That was being violent. So near the end of the Birmingham campaign, in an effort to draw together the multiple forces for peaceful change and to dramatize to the country and to the world the importance of solving the U.S. racial problem, King joined the civil rights leaders and organized the historic March on Washington, August 28, 1963. An interracial assembly of more than 200,000 gathered, so it's interracial. So he brought all races together. 1963, August the 28th. And they met down at the Lincoln Memorial right here in Washington, D.C. to demand equal justice for all citizens under the law. Here, the crowds were uplifted by the emotional strength and prophetic quality of King's famous I Have a Dream speech, in which he emphasized his faith that all men someday would be brothers. And we're still waiting on that day. So we're like maybe, in my opinion, maybe halfway there. The rising tide of civil rights agitation produced, as King had hoped, a strong effect on national opinion and resulted in the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, authorizing the federal government to enforce desegregation of public accommodations. That means we getting on the bus, you know, back then, well, they getting on the bus, they want to be able to get on the bus and, you know, different races. Not have to worry about, oh, I got to jump up out my seat. I paid my money. I got to jump up out my seat with somebody else. Now, if I feel like I want to get up, but then if they feel like they want to get up, you know, but other than that, you know, it should not have been anything that was written into law, you know. So it says the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, authorizing the federal government to enforce desegregation of public accommodations. So desegregation of public accommodations, I guess that's the trains, the buses, you know. I don't know if they had, I don't think they had any airplanes or anything like that back then, but trains, buses. So desegregation, so that means, you know, no splitting of the races on this public transportation, public accommodation, and outlawing discrimination in publicly owned facilities as well as in employment. So on the jobs, they wanted all the races to be able to come together. No segregation, no separating of the races. And it says that eventful year was climaxed by the award to King of the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo in December. I accept this award today with an abiding faith in America and an audacious faith in the future of mankind. So that's King talking, said King in his acceptance speech. I refuse to accept the idea that the isness of man's present nature makes him morally incapable of reaching up for the eternal oughtness that forever confronts him. Challenges of the final years of Martin Luther King. So I'm not going to read all this, but you can always go look him up online, Dr. Martin Luther King. So let me read some of his quotes, I guess. So they had a whole lot. Let me see. It says in the face of mounting criticism, King broadened his approach to include concerns other than racism. On April 4th, 1967, at Riverside Church in New York City, and again on the 15th at a Mammoth Peace rally in that city, he committed himself irrevocably to opposing U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. So he started involving himself in a whole lot of other things that he was not happy about, you know. Once before, in early January 1966, he had condemned the war, but official outrage from Washington and strenuous opposition within the black community itself had caused him to relent. He next sought to widen his base by forming a coalition of the poor of all races that would address itself to economic problems such as poverty and unemployment. So let me see if he has any quotes, because there's a lot more to read, but I'm not going to read all that, so you can always do your research, find out, but find out more, if you want to know more about Dr. Martin Luther King, he graduated from Morehouse College, and then he got his, after that he went and got his PhD in theology. So that's why they call him Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So I'm going to, let me see some quotes of Dr. King. Let's see what are some of his quotes. Dr. Martin Luther King. So there's a whole lot of pictures. Let's see. A whole lot of pictures. And Dr. King. Pictures are not that big, but let's see what quotes he has. We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. Excuse me. 25 quotes. Everyone has a power for greatness, not for fame, but greatness, because greatness is determined by service. So, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He has a lot of quotes. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. So in other words, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. Or whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. So basically, he's saying, Dr. Martin Luther King, don't let nothing stop you. Don't let anything stop you. In other words, you can't do this, you can't do that, but just try to get it done. That's what he's saying. You can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. You have to keep moving forward. Like I did in one of my other videos. I think I mentioned, if you have, don't let them stop you. If you have a dream, you have a goal, you have your aspirations. Sometimes you might get a little, disappointed. You might want to give up. But never give up. In other words, you can fall down, but the real problem is not getting back up. So falling down is really not the problem. In other words, you fell down, you failed at something. In other words, you failed at it, but the idea is to get up, keep on moving, keep moving forward. Like I failed my first accounting course, Strayer University, and I failed my first accounting course, and if I had stopped, I wouldn't finish and I wouldn't have graduated and got my degree. But what I did, I took that course over. I took that accounting course over, and it was the basics in accounting, and I had to take managerial accounting, so I passed that course. Became a little easier once I passed the first accounting course. But when you fail, sometimes you're going to fail. We are going to fail a lot of times in life. And the idea is to get back up and keep trying and try again. Sometimes we may feel like, hey, I messed up, I failed, I don't, sometimes you may lose interest, but consistency, determination is the key. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So in other words, love is the only thing that can drive out hate. So you have to have love in your life. Yeah, darkness cannot drive out darkness. So if it's already dark, what's the point? Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. So light can drive out darkness, and love can drive out hate. Let's see, Dr. Martin Luther King. Let me see what else he said. No work is insignificant. All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity. Never, never, never be afraid to do what's right. Never be afraid to do what's right. Because a lot of times some people they not even afraid to do what's wrong. So don't never be afraid to do what's right. Never be afraid to do what's right. Let's see. Let me see if I got a couple more. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. So you don't have to see the whole staircase. This is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. So in other words, you don't have to see where it's going to lead. You just take the first step. Just take the first step. It's just like you saying, hey, I'm thinking about going to college, but I want to kind of envision in my mind the end result, the end result. I want to go to college, but I keep envisioning in my mind. I keep envisioning in my mind the end results of me going to college. Am I going to finish? Of course it's going to be hard. Am I going to make friends? So when I finish, am I going to get a decent job? I want to make some good money when I come out of college. No, don't worry about all that. Just take the first step, which is if you have the funding, find out whether or not you can, get you some financial aid. Take that first step and apply. That's the first step. Don't worry about, the course is going to be hard, or am I going to meet some friends, or they might not like me in there in college, my teachers might not like me, and, all these other things that you may be thinking about is on your mind. Instead of doing all that, take the first step. Take the first step, apply, and then just, start reading and start studying. Go ahead and apply. Just start reading and studying ahead of time before you even start class. But the first step would be just apply for that college. It's the same thing with a job. You want this job, you want a job, you want that particular job. You say, well, just take the first step. Put that application in. Put that resume in. Don't just say, oh yeah, well, they might not like the boss, might not like me on the job, and I don't know if I'm gonna make any friends on the job. It might be too far away. I might not be able to get there. I don't have no money to even get to work. I want to try to get this job, but I don't even have money even to get to work. But sometimes God will help, and God will come through for you. So just have faith and just apply for the job. So that's what he's saying. Take the first step. You don't have to see the whole staircase. You don't have to see the whole picture. You don't have to see the whole vision in the beginning. Just take the first step. That's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Let me try one more. It's always the right time to do the right thing. That's right. Always the right time to do the right thing. Okay, let me go to Abraham Lincoln. Let me talk a little bit about Abraham Lincoln. I'm trying to make a couple of these real quick. Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States of America. Abraham Lincoln, President number 16. Let me write that down. Abraham Lincoln. Let me show you a picture of Mr. Lincoln. Mr. Abraham Lincoln. This is a nice big picture of him. Okay, that's Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln. Okay, that was Abraham Lincoln. So let me see what Abraham Lincoln is. Let me see what Abraham Lincoln is Let me see what he's talking about. Let me see what the internet is talking about. Abraham Lincoln, as I would not be a slave, so I would not be a master. This expresses my idea of democracy. Okay, Abraham Lincoln is often described as America's best and most popular president. Republicans and Democrats alike claim Honest Abe as their own. Yep, I remember they called him Honest Abe. Um, Yet we often forget that Lincoln was a complicated human being and that his presidency was the most controversial in American history. After he was elected, 7 southern states succeeded in protests between 1860 and 1861, effectively launching the Civil War. He was commander-in-chief of the Union Army during a war that took the lives of at least 620,000 Americans. He suspended the civil liberty of habeas corpus and instituted the first national military draft. And I know a lot of young fellows, they're like, you know what, I don't even want to sign up, or I don't want to be drafted. Indeed, he was so controversial that after winning office, he had to sneak into Washington on a secret train to avoid a suspected assassination plot. And when he left, it was when he left, it was the victim of a Confederate sympathizer. American politicians like to cast themselves as of the people, but few have come from beginnings as humble as Lincoln. He was born on the Kentucky frontier in 1809. He was born in 1809. Wow. In a dirt floor log cabin with one window, one door hung on leather hinges, and a primitive stick and chimney. He was tall, very tall. One of his good friends remembered him as a long, tall, raw-boned boy, odd and gawky. His clothes barely fit. One country observer wrote, between the shoe and sock and his made a buckskin there was bare and naked, 6 or more inches of Abe Lincoln's skin bone. But the ragged appearance clothed an intellectually ravenous mind, and discovering books changed Lincoln's life. He read everything he could get his hands on, and in his mind, in his mid-20s, he taught himself law, receiving his license to practice in 1836. I wish I could teach myself some law and get my degree that way. I mean, I took a couple law classes, and I did pass I did a paralegal course. I had that diploma. But they said he taught himself law. I wish I could teach. I mean, you can study, but I don't know if they, let you take the bar just by studying and not being in the actual, law classes. But, that's something to think about. But he said, no, he taught himself law and received his license to practice in 1836. It was way different back then. Okay, I'm not going to read all this, but that was Abraham Lincoln. Let me see. Let me see if he had, so that was Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, let me see if they have anything else. So he was the 16th president. Just think that was so long ago, because we are up at, we are at the 50, 57, 54, 56, 54 or 50, 50, 55th or something. We in the 50s when it comes to the president. This was the 16th president. Let me see. Okay, let me see. Americans who tell the truth. He was the 16th president of the United States from 1809 to 1809, I guess 1809. I guess that's the day and then 1865 when he passed. So I'm trying to see what number we are on while as president. I think it's 50, 54. It should be 55, the 55th president. Okay, now my internet is running slow. And so Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president. Then I want to talk about, I want to go back in time and talk about Christopher Columbus, Balboa, and America's Vespucci. Because they said America's, well, I mean, they didn't say, but from my, when I learned in school, America's Vespucci, he got to the Americas before Christopher Columbus. So Abraham Lincoln, I'm trying to see if they had anything else on him. So they have an Abraham Lincoln Library, Abraham Lincoln Newcastle Public Library. Abraham Lincoln. What are 3 things Abraham Lincoln is famous for? What are 3 things Abraham Lincoln is famous for? Lincoln's legacy is based on his momentous achievements. He successfully waged a political struggle and civil war that preserved the Union, and he ended slavery, created the possibility of civil and social freedom for African Americans. He ended slavery. What are 10 facts about Abraham Lincoln? So he ended slavery. So you can always read more on Abraham Lincoln. He was largely self-educated. Before pursuing national politics, Lincoln served 4 consecutive terms in the Illinois State Legislature. Lincoln was the president first. Lincoln's wife came from a wealthy slave-owning family. Lincoln was not an abolitionist. So his wife's family owned slaves. Wife owned slaves. Wife's family owned slaves. So let's see. Let's see what else they're saying about Abraham. This is a big picture of Abraham Lincoln. Let me show you. I'll show you a big picture of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln. That's Abraham Lincoln. So that's Abraham Lincoln. So his wife's family owned slaves. And he was not. Abraham Lincoln was not an abolitionist. He was not an abolitionist, but he did end slavery. He did end slavery, and his wife's family owned slaves, but he was not an abolitionist, so he was not fighting to end slavery. I guess he just ended it by being president. He served as president for 5 years. He served as president for 5 years from March the 4th, 1861 until his deletion by John Wilkes Booth on April the 15th, 1865. Lincoln is known primarily for his leadership during the American Civil War, 1861-1865, and for signing the Emancipation Proclamation, an executive order changing the legal status of slaves to free. So that is Abraham Lincoln. So he signed the Emancipation Proclamation to free the slaves, and it was 1865, April the 15th, and that was Abraham Lincoln. And it says he was largely self-educated. Despite becoming a successful lawyer, Lincoln did not have a degree. So he didn't even have a degree, but he was a lawyer. I wish we could do that now. Despite becoming a successful lawyer, Lincoln did not have a degree. His total schooling obtained from traveling teachers is estimated to total only around 1 year. His total schooling obtained from traveling, so he was a traveling teacher, and he only did that for a year, and he taught himself the law, and then he passed, passed the test and got his license to practice law. Now, I wish it was like that today. Well, I guess that was so many years ago. They're not hardly gonna let us do that today. I mean, that would be easier for people. I think if you study and and you take the test, if you can study and online or whatever materials you have, you pass that bar, then that's all that counts. Pass that bar. And it says, before pursuing national politics, Lincoln served 4 consecutive terms in the Illinois state legislature. Lincoln was the president of first. I think I read some of this. Lincoln's wife came from a wealthy slave-owning family. So his wife came from a wealthy slave-owning family. Lincoln was not an abolitionist. So that is Abraham Lincoln, and his main purpose in the Civil War was to preserve the Union. It says there were abolitionists, slavery supporters, pro-unionists, and neutral sentiments in both the North and South. But it was Confederate secessionists who began the war by firing on Fort Sumter on April the 12th, 1861. The bill to create U.S. Secret Service was on the president's desk the night of his deletion. The bill to create U.S. Secret Service, so no, they wanted to create the Secret Service, was on the president's desk the night of his. So they had the bill to sign, so he could sign for, I guess, obtaining the Secret Service. They were going to start that. But then they deleted him before they could, One of the principal purposes of the Secret Service is to protect national leaders such as the president. It is possible that their presence would have saved Lincoln's life. During his deletion, Lincoln's bodyguard was absent. So, if his bodyguard was absent, it looked like they should have had somebody else. They should have had somebody else working that day. The president's security, John Parker, left his post to watch the play at Washington, D.C.'s Ford Theater and went to the saloon next door during intermission. It was the same place that John Wilkes Booth was drinking. The brother of John Wilkes Booth saved Lincoln's son. Not long before the president was deleted, Edwin Booth, a famous actor at the time, pulled Robert Lincoln to safety at a train station after he had fallen on the tracks. It was just as a train was about to leave the station. So that's Abraham Lincoln. So let's look up, okay, I'm almost at an hour. Let me go for Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus. I'm just taking it back in time. Christopher Columbus was an explorer. So here is a nice picture of him. Christopher Columbus. Let's see. Come around on this side. Come around on this side. So that's Christopher Columbus. He was an explorer. So that's Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus. So let me see what else they're going to say about him. They had 3 different pictures. Christopher Columbus. He was an Italian explorer. Italian. Christopher Columbus was an Italian explorer and navigator who completed 4 voyages across the Atlantic Ocean by the Catholic monarchs of Spain. Atlantic Ocean. So I like to do these little research assignments because it refreshes my memory and it brings information to, my followers, my subscribers, the public. So, what was Christopher Columbus, what was he famous for? Christopher Columbus, 1451 to 1506, is known for his 1492 discovery of the New World of the Americas on board his ship Santa Maria. Aboard his ship Santa Maria. Okay, let me see. The next one, it says, who found America first? Okay, it says Christopher Columbus is credited with discovering the Americas in 1492. 1492. So some of these dates are kind of easy to remember. The real story, who discovered America? It says who landed in America first. It says, we know now that Columbus was among the last explorers to reach the Americas. To reach the Americas, not the first. So he wasn't the first. It was Amerigo Vespucci. He was one of the ones that he got here before Christopher Columbus. 500 years before Columbus, a daring band of Vikings led by Leif Erikson set foot in North America and established a settlement. So neither one of them were among the only ones. So they were among the first, I guess. Then it says, what did Christopher Columbus discover in 1492, and what was U.S. called before 1776? See, on September the 9th, 1776, the Continental Congress formally declared the name of the new nation to be the United States of America. This replaced the term United Colonies, which had been in general use. So it used to be called the United Colonies. United Colonies. Congress renamed the nation United States of America. So I'm glad they named it the United States of America, because that does sound better. Who owned America before? The 3 principal colonial powers in North America were Spain, England, and France. Although eventually other powers such as the Netherlands and Sweden also received holdings on the continent, settlement by the Spanish started the European colonization of the Americas. Who founded the 13 colonies? The British king, in the early 1600s, the British king began establishing colonies in America. By the 1700s, most of the settlements had formed into 13 British colonies: Connecticut, Delaware, Georgia, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey, Virginia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and South Carolina. By the 1700s, most of the settlements had formed into 13 British colonies, so 13 colonies. And that was by the 1700s. And it said, who owns America today? That's a good question. They don't have nobody. When they say who owns America today, they got USA Today, Broadsheet, Daily Newspaper, Broadsheet, Gannett, uh, Al Newhoff. I don't know what they're saying when it comes to that. Who lived in the U.S. first? In the 1970s, college students in archaeology, such as myself, learned that the first human beings to arrive in North America had come over a land bridge from Asia and Siberia approximately 13,000 to 13,500 years ago. Those people, the first North Americans, were known collectively as Clovis people. So in other words, Clovis people were here before regular humans. That's what they're saying. See, in the 1970s, college students in archaeology. So archaeology is a good field study to get into too. Archaeology, such as myself, learned that the first human beings to arrive in North America, they had come over a large bridge from Asia and Siberia approximately 13,000 to 13,500 years ago. And the first North Americans were called the Clovis people. Called the Clovis people. So those were the first North Americans. Yeah, I like to write it down because keep it in my memory. Okay. I think that is it for Christopher Columbus. Let me see if Christopher Columbus has any quotes. Christopher Columbus, following the light of the sun, we left the old world by prevailing over all obstacles and distractions. One may unfailingly arrive at his chosen goal or destination. Riches don't make a man rich, they only make him busier. Busier. Riches don't make a man rich, they only make a man busier. That's Christopher Columbus. It's easy to discover what another has discovered before. It is easy. Let's see, 5 of his famous quotes. Christopher Columbus. The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. Yep. So the greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. Like I said previously, when you fall, you get up. That's what is most important. But in rising every time we fall. The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. Yep. So get started. Don't keep talking about what you want to do. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, just get started. So the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Yeah, your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. You know what I mean? Live your life. A lot of times we do tend to worry about what the next person is doing. So don't spend time worrying about, trying to check somebody else about what they're doing in their life. So, don't spend time. That's what he's saying. That's Christopher Columbus. He says, your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. So don't live your life precariously in someone else's life. In other words, you see somebody that's in college, somebody bought a brand new house or brand new car, somebody got married, somebody had kids, and you didn't have none of that. And you just, envious of them, don't worry about their life, congratulate them, but you still have your life to live. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't live their life, and you see they got a big house over there, they next door, they got 2 or 3 beautiful kids running around, and you have none of that. You know, they have a new car, they have a good job, maybe they're running their own business, but you know, so I was with, I think I was reading, uh, okay, I was listening at, it was a video on, I think it was Louis Farrakhan. He was talking about, gifts. Everybody, he was talking about how everyone has a gift. So God put a gift in us all. So it's just, you know, God put a gift in everybody. So you see somebody else maybe doing better than you at that moment, but God put a gift in us all. And the thing is, it's your, I guess it's your, you know, you just, and you have, if you have to find your own, what he's saying is you have to find your gift. So maybe they found their gift, and maybe they, you know, they may be doing better than you or me, or you know, always somebody's doing better, but they found their gift. In other words, he was saying that God put a gift in us all, so we all have some type of gift. We just have to find it. We have to find it. So that's what Louis Farrakhan was saying. I was looking at the video. I think it was on Instagram, but it says your time is limited, so don't waste time. Don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't live no one else's life. You got to make yourself happy. Doing the things that you want to do. You want to go to college. You want to run your own business. You want to get married. You want to have children. You know, whatever you want to do. You want to be a teacher. You want to go to school for a doctor, a lawyer, a business. You want to go to college for business. You want to go, you know, don't waste time. Worry about, you know, somebody else and what they're doing. So we have our own life to live. Don't waste time. That's what Christopher Columbus said. And the last one, if life were predictable, it would cease to be life and be without flavor. So if life were predictable, it would cease to be life and be without flavor. So in other words, if life were predictable, so in other words, we can't predict. In other words, he's saying, well, we can't predict what's going to happen. Because if life were predictable, it wouldn't be life. It wouldn't be life. It would be life without flavor. It would cease to be life and be without flavor. So it wouldn't have no flavor to it. So in other words, I guess without flavor, he's saying that life, you know, has many facets, has many changes. Sometimes you never know what's going to happen in life, you know. There are many surprises, so flavor comes with surprises. So let me see what it says. It says, what's the saying about Christopher Columbus? Who is most powerful? Who is most powerful quote? Who is the strongest quote? No, I don't want that. So I don't know what they're talking about when it says that. What are 3 interesting facts about Christopher Columbus? It says Columbus didn't set out to prove the earth was round. Columbus was likely not the first European to cross the Atlantic Ocean. 3 countries refused to back Columbus's voyage. The Santa Maria wrecked on Columbus's historic voyage. So he wrecked the ship, the Santa Maria. He wrecked the Santa Maria on his voyage. I guess he was traveling so much and moving around. It said he wrecked it. It says 10 things you may not know about Christopher Columbus. I think this is going to be the last one. I'm already at an hour. Let me see, because I think that's the last. Well, I think I want to do Balboa, and that'll be it. Okay, let me see. 10 things. Columbus didn't set out to prove the earth was round. Forget those myths. I got these pop-ups on here. Okay, forget those myths perpetuated by everyone from Washington Irving to Bugs Bunny. There was no need for Columbus to debunk the flat earthers, and the ancient Greeks had already done so. As early as the 6th century BC, the Greek mathematician, I have his name on my list too, Pythagoras. I'll probably do him on my next video. Yep, so it says the Greek mathematician Pythagoras surmised the world was round. And 2 centuries later, Aristotle backed him up with astronomical observations. By 1492, most educated people knew the planet was not shaped like a pancake. Really? Columbus was likely not the first European to cross the Atlantic Ocean. And number three countries refused to back Columbus's voyage. See, for nearly a decade, Columbus lobbied European monarchies to bankroll his quest to discover a western sea route to Asia. In Portugal, England, and France, the response was the same, no. So no one wanted to fund Christopher Columbus's voyage. The experts told Columbus his calculations were wrong and that the voyage would take much longer than he thought. Royal advisors in Spain raised similar concerns to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. Turns out the naysayers were right. Columbus dramatically underestimated the Earth's circumference and the size of the oceans. See, he was trying to go around the Atlantic Ocean, and he underestimated himself. Luckily for him, he ran into the uncharted Americas. So he actually didn't know where he was going, what he was going to run into. So he wasn't even actually looking for America. The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. The Nina, the Pinta were not the actual names of two of Columbus's 3 ships. In the 15th century Spain, ships were traditionally named after saints. Salty sailors, however, bestowed less than sacred names upon their vessels. Mariners dubbed one of the 3 ships in Columbus's 1492 voyage the Pinta, Spanish for the painted one, or Ostitute. The Santa Clara, meanwhile, was nicknamed the Nina in honor of its owner, Juan Nino. Although the Santa Maria is called by its official name, its nickname was La Gallega, after the province of Galicia in which it was built. The Santa Maria wrecked on Columbus's historic voyage. On Christmas Eve, 1492, a cabin boy ran Columbus's flagship into a coral reef on the northern coast of Hispaniola, near present-day Cap Haiti. His crew spent a very unmerry Christmas salvaging the Santa Maria's cargo. Columbus returned to Spain aboard the Nina, but he had to leave nearly 40 crew members behind to start the first European settlement in the Americas, La Navidad. When Columbus returned to the settlement in the fall of 1943, none of the crew were found alive. So he left the crew, of course, when he got back. It says he had to leave 40 crew members behind to start the first European settlement in the Americas, La Navidad. So he had to leave his crew members, 40 of them. And then it said when he returned to the settlement in the fall of 1493, none of the crew were found alive. How could you expect them to be alive if you left them? Did you leave with any food, any money where they could get something to eat? Columbus made 4 voyages to the New World. Columbus returned to Spain in chains in 1500. A lunar eclipse may have saved Columbus. In February 1504, a desperate Columbus was stranded in Jamaica, abandoned by half his crew, and denied food by the Islanders. The heavens that he relied on for navigation, however, would guide him safely once again. Knowing from his almanac that a lunar eclipse was coming on February 29, 1504, Columbus warned the Islanders that his god was upset with their refusal of food and that the moon would rise in flame with wrath as an expression of divine pleasure. On the appointed night, the eclipse darkened the moon and turned it red, and the terrified Islanders offered provisions and beseeched Columbus to ask his God for mercy. Even in death, Even in deletion, Columbus continued to cross the Atlantic. Following his deletion, 1506, Columbus was in Valladolid, Spain, and then moved to Seville. At the request of his daughter-in-law, Columbus and his son were shipped across the Atlantic to Hispaniola and interred in a Santo Domingo Cathedral. When the French captured the island in 1795, the Spanish dug up thought to be those of the explorer and moved them to Cuba before returning them to Seville after the Spanish-American War in 1898. So, the heirs of Columbus and the Spanish monarchy were in litigation until 1790. So, heirs of Columbus. So, after he was, left us, left the world, then they had his heirs. So it says heirs of Columbus and the Spanish monarchy were in litigation until 1790. So his heirs and the Spanish monarchy were in litigation after he left. And that is Christopher Columbus. Let me go see. Let's go with Google Balboa. 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 So it's the last one because I'm over an hour. Let me see. Vasco Nunez de Balboa in history. Balboa was born 1475 in Jerez de los Caballeros, a town in the impoverished Extremadura region of Spain. He was born 1475. His father was believed to be a nobleman. So let me click on, let me see. Okay, let me go down here to let me click on the accomplishments of Balboa, just to read a little bit. He was born 1475, Jerez de los Caballeros. He was deleted January 12, 1519. He was a Spanish conquistador and explorer. He was a Spanish explorer. So he was a Spanish explorer. Spanish explorer who was head of the first stable settlement in the South American continent, 1511, and who was the first European to sight the eastern shore of the Pacific Ocean. So he sailed Balboa. He was the first European to sight the eastern shore of the Pacific Ocean. And you see, I talked about Christopher Columbus. He went across the Atlantic Ocean. Balboa went across the Pacific Ocean. So Balboa went across the Pacific Ocean. And it says, Balboa came from the ranks of that lower nobility whose sons, men of good family, who were not reared behind the plow. In the words of chronicler Gonzalo Fernandez de Ovidio. This is a Spanish name, so I just want to pass by that. Often sought their fortunes in the Indies. In 1500, he sailed with Rodrigo on a voyage of exploration along the coast of present-day Colombia. Later, he settled in Hispaniola, Haiti. They called it, they spelled it Hispaniola, but that is Haiti. They have in parentheses Haiti, Haiti. But he did not prosper as a pioneer farmer and had to escape his creditors by embarking as a stowaway on an expedition organized by Martin Fernandez to bring aid and reinforcements to a colony founded by Ojeda on the coast of Urabá in modern Colombia. The expedition found the survivors of the colony. The expedition found the survivors of the colony, but Ojeda had departed. On the advice of Balboa, the settlers moved across the Gulf of Urabá on the less hostile coast of the Isthmus of Panama, where they founded the town of Santa Maria, the first stable settlement on the continent, and began to acquire gold by barter or war with the local Indians. So they acquired gold by barter. So I mean barter means they exchange, you exchange this for that, In other words, I may exchange somebody give me some pillows for my sofa and I give them, some plants or something, whatever you want to exchange, so they dealt with the bartering system when they're exchanging goods. So you can exchange goods from country to country, person to person. The colonists soon disposed in Cicero Ojeda's second in command and elected the town council. One of his two alcaldes or magistrates was Balboa. With the subsequent departure, Balboa became the undisputed head of the colony. In December 1511, King Ferdinand II sent orders that named Balboa interim governor and captain general of Darien. Balboa, meanwhile, had organized a series of gold and slave hunting expeditions into the Indian chiefdom of the area. His Indian policy combined the use of barter, every kind of force, including torture, to extract information, and the tactic of divide and conquer by forming alliances with certain tribes against others. So Balboa was a real treacherous type of person. That's what it seems. So his Indian policy combined the use of barter, every kind of force. So in other words, bartering with these people and trading this for that, and force and torture, and just to extract, get information out of them. That was a tactic. He said, to divide and conquer by forming alliances with certain tribes against others. So putting the tribes against one another, that was a tactic for him. The Indians of Darien, less warlike than their neighbors and without poisoned arrows, were not formidable foes and often fled at the approach of Spaniards. The Spanish arsenal included their terrible war dogs, sometimes used by Balboa as executioners to tear Indian victims to pieces. So this was something else, Balboa. I'm not going to read too much of that. The Spaniards were told by Indians that the South lay a sea and a province infinitely rich in gold. So I guess Balboa thought that he can travel this through around the Pacific Ocean because he's looking for gold, and then he put those tribes, pinned those tribes against one another. That was a tactic for him, so they can be at each other's, fighting with each other. So let me see. Sighting of the Pacific. Meanwhile, Balboa, without waiting for reinforcement, he sailed on September 1st, 1513, from Santa Acla at the narrowest part of the isthmus, accompanied by 190 Spaniards. So he took the Spaniards with him, hundreds of Indian porters. He marched south across the isthmus through dense jungles, rivers, and swamps, and ascended the Cordillera on September 25th, 1513. Standing silent upon a peak in Darien, he sighted the Pacific Ocean. Some days later, he reached the shore of the Gulf of San Miguel and took possession of the Mar del Sur and the adjacent lands for the King of Castile. Storms prevented a crossing to the Pearl Islands and turning inland. Balboa penetrated almost to the site of present-day Panama City. before returning across the Isthmus to Santa Maria in January 1514. His letters and those of a royal agent who had been sent to Darien to prepare the ground for the coming of Pedrarius, announcing the discovery of the South Sea, restored Balboa to royal favor. He was named governor of the Mar del Sur and of the provinces of Panama and Coiba, but remained subject to the authority of Pedrarius, who arrived in Darien, now a crown colony, and renamed Castilla del Oro in June 1514. And so it's a whole lot about Balboa. So in other words, he sailed the Pacific Ocean. Christopher Columbus sailed the Atlantic Ocean. And Balboa was looking for those riches, that gold, And he did whatever he could do along the way. He, bartered with different people, had tactics where he was turning the people against each other. So he can, so he can be the favorite person. So, okay, that is it. I think that's the last one for today. Oh, okay. I think that's it. So I did, and next time I'll go over some law. I want to go over some law terms. So I have, different areas of law: corporate law, tax law, intellectual property law. Like copyrights, patents, trademarks. I want to talk a little bit about the blockchain. So that's a field now, a law field to get into. Excuse me, blockchain. Because, dealing with the blockchain, investing your money and everything in the blockchain, and that's according to my research, that's a good field, that's a good field of law to get into, the blockchain law. Healthcare law, environmental law, then I have criminal rights law, criminal law, animal rights law, immigration law, sports and entertainment law, labor law, family law, and of course, you have tort law, civil law, civil law, criminal law. Oh yeah, I had the first one was corporate law. But so many different areas of law, and I didn't put administrative law. Did I put administrative law? Yeah, we have administrative law. There's so many different areas, but I just want to give a little bit of insight on, different ones. Just a little bit of information. So I think I'm going to close out now. It's late. It's dark outside. It's late now. So I want to thank you for joining me. So if you can subscribe to my channel, comment below, subscribe to my channel. I want to bring enlightening information, inspirational, educational information. I want to do some blogging. Most of my topics will be business, law, accounting. I want to do some, some blogging. I want to, I'll be bringing information on, ancient philosophers in the past. Socrates, Plato, Descartes, John Locke, B.F. Skinner. So I think I have some of those already on my other videos. But I want to explore some other philosophers. Maybe some ones that I never even heard of. Because most of the ones I've done so far and I shed light on so far, those are the ones that I talked about. Actually, they're that I studied. I studied up on when I was in college. Straight University. But it used to be straight college, but so when I started out, it was straight college. But then by the time I finished and got my degree, they turned into a university. So they have many campuses throughout the world. Straight University is very worldwide. But I want to say thanks for joining me today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. So I'll see you next time, on my next video. So you all have a blessed one. Have a real good one. So bye.